Hi, everyone. Welcome to the moon forecast for the Aquarius full moon coming up in August. I'm Kendall Shawhan with the Bohemian Tarot Girl, and this is my co-host, Amy. Amy, give yourself a shout out.
Hi, I'm Amy Amonette, and I'm an intuitive energy coach and moon circle leader. So it's that time of the month where we get together and start talking about the energy that's going on.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It is double Aquarius full moon, and it's kind of the end of that portal coming through. So, what did you see when you were diving into this?
Oh gosh, there's so much, and I'm usually one of those people where I understand, and I've really taken time over several years of my life to try and understand and interpret energy and look at things from a more spiritual view. And when you do that, you tend to realize that there is a reason for certain energy, even when it's uncomfortable. But I have to say, when I usually don't let my sailor mouth out on these videos, but this last month since the last moon, even knowing what was happening with the energy, there was so many times where I was just like, what the fuck? What is going on here? And I know that I'm not the only one who's felt that. And then I have to kind of when I was going through those moments, because we're human and we're having this human experience and this whole collective chaotic energy that's been flowing around everywhere. And there's reasons for that. We're going to get into that with the planets, but it's almost like I had to consciously step back and be like, okay, now what is this particular thing trying to show me? What do I need to recognize as happening on a deeper level? Because it's not just something that's coming into my life to make things feel uncomfortable or crazy or, give me other things that I have to take care of, because as moms and women and business owners and things, we always feel like we have a to-do list a mile long. So there are some key times during the last month since we talked, when we had the first Aquarius full moon, which happened at the end of July, that really kind of made me go, what's the overall plan here? So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And I know each person has their own experience. You, Kendall, had a very different experience with this moon than I did. So
100%. Though I'm with you with that first half, right after that first full moon, I had this, what I would call this portal time. That first half was not super comfortable for me. I felt really uncomfortable. There was a lot of emotions happening and a lot of me processing some things. And I felt like I almost had some epiphany moments as I kind of came up to that midpoint. And now I feel like everything's going great.
Back in flow for you.
Yeah, I'm back in flow. I feel lucky. I got some things going. So it's great. But that first half, I was like, ooh. I mean, you had it way worse, but yeah.
That's but it's the experience I probably need to kind of shake me up a bit. I'm Taurus, Taurus energy, we get stuck in things, and sometimes we need a good kick in the pants to be like, you don't need to do this anymore. So that's kind of where we're at. But let's talk about kind of this moon in particular. So it's happening full moon in Aquarius, which is happening on August 22nd. And it's at 5:02 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, which is where we're at. And it's occurring at 29 degrees of Aquarius and Leo. And Aquarius and Leo are opposite signs on the zodiac wheel, which is what makes the moon full. And so if I remember right, that first full moon with Aquarius and Leo happened at 1 degree. So we're at a sign has from 1 degree to 30 degrees. So we're at the very, very end of that whole transition. And we talked about how it was going to open this portal, this energetic portal. And someone asked me, they're like, well, what does that even mean? And so when we talk about these energy portals, it's kind of like a fast track through something, some kind of change or catalyst that's going to come into your life, so that where you start, you have a different outcome at the end. And that can be either something concrete in your life, like something physical in your your house, your relationship, your job. It can be something like that, or it can even be an idea or a belief or a thought process that kind of comes in and changes something that has a reverberating effect throughout the rest of your life or course that you're on. So depending on where Aquarius happened in your chart, I would go back and look at 1 degree Aquarius in your personal chart and see what house that was in. And that can give you some ideas as to what area in your life might have had like the most change or shakeup happen for you. So
Definitely. I like that advice.
yeah.
If you didn't catch on to like what the theme was from this last full moon, that is a great way to kind of check in and see where you should be focused.
And Aquarius energy we've talked about before, it's kind of like that futuristic, innovative. It has a lot to do with the collective. And then on the opposite side, we have Leo, which is, like your personal like spark and how you show up in the world. And so we were talking about how you can kind of like put your best self forward and live more in alignment with your personal truth. And so I think everything that's happened over this last month is kind of like coming in to show you, okay, well, maybe this isn't what's meant for you. And maybe you've been holding on to this too long. And maybe it's time for you to start looking at things a little differently. This way that you've been thinking that you need to show up or thinking that you need to settle for is not what's really in your highest good or potential. And so for some people that can be uncomfortable. It can also feel, if you work through that, it can be really liberating. It can be like a big aha moment. It can be, people are going to feel different ways about this depending on how attached they are to where they have been coming from.
Yep. I like that.
So if you've been having what the fuck moments all month, like look at look at what the overall picture is that's trying to come through for you. Like, what's the message? I really believe, and I've really tried to live my life in a way that I feel like, not that things are predetermined because we always have choice, but that certain things happen in order to propel us towards our greatest abilities and our greatest life. And the more resistant we are to some of those things, the more we're not going to move towards what we're meant for. So which is another like interesting thing that's happening with Aquarius, because we do have some larger planets in Aquarius that have been at play. And so this moon is kind of highlighting some of those outer planets that are hiding in Aquarius. And I've been saying this to people, and I know I've said it to you, Kendall, and I'm sure a lot of you out there have felt this. I feel like time recently has been really warpy. Like I feel like it should be June, but then I also feel like this year has lasted forever. And I feel like I'm, over dealing with all the stuff that we did last year, but it's still kind of here.
Yep.
And then I'm ready to move into the future. Like there's just this really like fluid sense of time right now. And that has to do with Saturn, and Saturn is in Aquarius right now because Saturn rules time and karma and the rules and things like that. And I was thinking about that with this, getting ready for this video. And I almost feel like this Aquarian energy that we're being given right now, in my mind, I have this picture of being shown your highest future. And in a way, like, so
I like
if we go back and you have, if you buy into the belief that before you come to this earth, you kind of get an overview of what your life is going to look like,
Mhm.
and you can see outcomes that we can't see as humans. I feel like this Aquarian energy, it's like our subconscious is almost getting that remembrance of like our highest potential future for ourselves. And since we can't see how to get from point A to point B necessarily right now, it feels like a very restless sort of
Mhm.
in between state because we're in the process. Um, and the energy of this whole year, we've talked about it, it feels like we're being fast tracked and elevated and, being moved through this energy really fast to get from point A to point B, but we're still not out of the fog. We don't know what it's going to look like. And so I kept just coming back to, having to trust that your highest self knows where it's going. It knows its best potential for you, and kind of to stop fighting that resistance and start embracing whatever changes are happening.
Yep. No, I like that. Really asking yourself what you want. And if it's a yes, great, then go for it. If it's a no, then, you need to look at what your heart really wants. So,
Yeah. And learning how to tap into your intuition right now is probably one of your greatest tools that you can have in
100%.
your personal tool belt, because there is a lot of illusion happening in the world. And everyone's going to be viewing things from their own lens. And so being able to connect with your own personal knowing and what feels like truth to you instead of what's being kind of thrown around, um, and embracing like the fears or the distrust or the um, a lot of the emotions of the collective that are coming through. um, I don't think that there's necessarily a right or wrong way to be right now, except to acknowledge what is true for you
Yes.
and clearing away some of those outer things that may be influencing how you react. Like, it's not a good time to be reactive to the environment.
100%. I'm with you on the being true to yourself. We can only make choices that are best for ourselves, and not worry about what others think we should do or what we should do.
Mhm.
Really just check in with yourself and do what you need to do in your life for yourself. So, thank you for pointing. I mean, that's super
Yeah.
important, and I think a lot of people miss that in life. I mean, with everything in your world, you should always check in with yourself and make sure that the choices that you're making because you want to do them, not because your husband, your spouse, your mom want you to do something. It
Yeah.
needs to be about yourself.
Or societal obligations,
Yeah.
gender roles. We've been
100%.
having conversations about that with um, my daughter. I mean, because she's figuring herself out, and we've been having discussions about just because you don't um, necessarily fall into like what a typical girl might like doesn't mean that you aren't a girl,
Mhm.
or that you don't um, that, and not so much that, I mean, that's a much bigger conversation obviously, and there's a lot that goes into those kinds of things. um but it's also like there's no rule that says you have to be a certain way.
Yeah.
And so if you're buying into this idea that's been fed to you by society or your parents or um you know other things that have propelled that belief system in you throughout your
Yeah.
life, if you continue to buy into that, like there's just no reason to, like, who made those rules? You make your own rules.
100% we do.
And I think that gets back to like this other energy that is happening right now. And it's been the major energy for 2021 is we have two planets that are squaring each other. And a square means that in the wheel of the zodiac, if it's a circle, a square is where two planets are meeting each other at 90 degrees, like a 90-degree angle. So it's a square. And for all of 2021, we have had Uranus in Taurus and Saturn in Aquarius, which have been in like this really tight squaring position. And squares are not a comfortable placement for planets to be. And when you have these two planets, and Uranus is all about freedom and liberation and innovation, and Aquarius actually rules Uranus. So that's interesting. Or Uranus rules Aquarius. God, why do I always do that? You know what I mean? They belong to each other. And Taurus is in Uranus right now, and Taurus is a very like steadfast material, slow moving, and yet it's been in Uranus since 2018, and it's a 7-year transit. And so it's been coming along and wanting this big shakeup. And it's notorious when Uranus is in Taurus that things like weird weather patterns happen, earthquakes, financial markets get weird, rules get kind of questioned. And so that some of the things that are happening, like it's just the energy that planet is kind of helping to bring. And then we have Saturn, which is in Aquarius, and Saturn is all about the rules and karma and time and following the order of things. And with Aquarius being in there, that's not necessarily a happy placement for that either, because Aquarius wants to be innovative and, you know, move forward and think futuristically. And so we're having kind of this battle all year long, and a little bit into 2022. And this actually started, if you know, this close alignment between these planets actually started in like early June of 2020. And if we look at what was happening then with a lot of the Black Lives Matter movement, that is something I think we talked about it back then. That's something that comes up frequently in this alignment. I think it's been like 22 years since we had this close of a square between these two planets. But the closest since they were exact, and I could be wrong, but if I was looking at my notes right, was like back at civil rights movement in like the 60s. And so it was kind of like this great shakeup that was happening. And we're feeling that tension now between what has been, what wants to be. And I'm bringing this up because there were 3 points during this year where those two planets were exactly at the same point in the square. And that was February 17th, June 14th, and then it's going to culminate on Christmas Eve, December 24th. And so we're going to see like the full effect of everything closer to the end of the year. Yep. And what this whole change and shakeup has been between these two, like what their purpose is. The last time these two planets were squaring in these signs was in the 1500s, I believe is what I read. Wow. When Martin Luther came and had like the Reformation.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And there was a lot of civil unrest then, and a lot of people not quite sure what to believe. And so if you take that kind of energy, but we also see how that kind of propelled things forward for a lot of different like change of power and, you know, changes in government. I don't know how it's going to play out for this, but it's always interesting to look at the history and see
Yeah.
kind of how it played out before, so we can kind of get an idea of what this energy brings with it.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I wanted to talk about this now in particular, since we didn't have a new moon video because I was traveling in life, going back at when we had the Aquarius, the Leo new moon, the alignment of that moon was that it was creating a T-square between these two planets. And that means that the moon was also squaring Saturn and also squaring Uranus at the same time as they were kind of squaring each other. So there was a lot of stuff that was going to come up that was going to kind of reflect on this tense energy at that time. So if whatever you were shown or wherever you were feeling like you might be restricted, or that you were craving more freedom around something, or that this thing wasn't working for you anymore, or what you have been doing or how you've been living is not fulfilling your highest need, like that is probably why. So pay attention to what you might have been shown over the last couple of weeks.
Oh, 100%.
This full moon that we're having now, with it being the second Aquarius full moon, like this is kind of, it's the end of that portal. It's kind of like, phew, you made it.
Mm-hmm.
And now you can start implementing all of these changes and this forward movement. You're closing the door maybe on a chapter in your life that has been holding you back. And the interesting thing, I know I've been talking a lot, but the interesting thing about this full moon is because it's happening at 29 degrees, we have the full moon, and then later on that day, all of the moon and the sun both shift signs. So the sun is moving right into Virgo right after, on the same day, and the moon's moving into Pisces. And so we go from this air fire energy into this more earthy, watery, and this grounding energy that's going to give some stability to whatever direction you're headed into next.
Mm-hmm.
So
I like that. And I think it's really unique. And the fact that it's being paired, like we have this like fire energy, and you have all this stuff kind of like manifesting and coming forward. And then we're kind of transitioning into that time where it's a little more about planning. And like you said, like there's some stability to it. So.
And I know there's other planet stuff that was happening. You mentioned that when you were looking into it, there was stuff to do with relationships and communication. And
oh yeah, I mean, we have a lot of the planets are all in retrograde right now, and when I'm looking at it going forward, you're gonna start seeing some stuff happen that's kind of coming in. I think we've gone through this time where we figured out what we need to implement in our life. We're going to see some change, and then there's going to be further growth as we come into the fall. And then, looking at it, astrologically, we can see like what's, that there's all these like bigger changes potentially happening, maybe for the collective, maybe on an individual level, depending on your sign, happening towards the end of the year. So for me, when I'm looking at this full moon, it's a lot about our relationships and who, like making some choices maybe in our lives. And you don't need to take relationships in the context of necessarily like your love life. I mean, think about everybody who you interact with, the people that you have, that you go to work with, those sorts of things. And so making sure that your life is aligning with yourself and that your people are your people. So.
Yes, which is hugely important. I've had a lot of people lately, friends and stuff, who are realizing that maybe the people that they've had hanging around aren't the best people to have hanging around. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, I mean, it's okay if you have to let some people go.
It is.
Some people come in for a while, and it doesn't mean they need to travel with you forever.
Yep. They come in, they'll teach you some lessons, and then, you'll move on and you'll gain new people that kind of support your new path that you're going on. So, it's okay to acknowledge, your feelings and the feelings of sadness, but be okay with, continuing to move forward and letting go and releasing some of these negative energies that you're carrying with you. It's not fun to tote around physical negative energy with you if if something needs to go for your own well-being, and carrying that is not a good thing. So
Yep. You pulling cards?
I'm just shuffling, kind of random.
I was like waiting for the big reveal.
Oh no, I haven't pulled one yet. Do you have anything else to add before we chat about like journal prompts and pull a card? Or
we do have the journal prompts, and those are in the Moon Guide, which can be downloaded through Kendall's site, Bohemian Tarot Girl. And those will have some good, and some of them you might notice are similar to the Aquarius full moon that happened in July, but try not to look at your answers from that, and go and do the journal prompts for this moon and even for the new moon, and see how they might have changed for you, how you respond to those questions. They're not quite the same, but there is some similarities because it is a similar energy with just a little bit of a twist to it. And yeah, just really try and focus on what actually I do have. So, me in quotes, but one of my favorite astrologers posted something the other day about this current energy. And one of the things that she put on there, which was not one of my journal prompts, but I thought it was a really good question. And she said, if I were to put my own highest interests first, what would I do differently now? And I thought that was a really good way of kind of looking inward at what maybe you're doing isn't aligning, and how could you align better, and what would you do differently? And then the other quote that I had was, actually, it's interesting because so many, there was a couple different quotes I had floating around in my head, and both of them were from Anais Nin. And the one that really stood out was, and the day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to bloom. And I think that a lot of people are at that point. This moon in particular, I feel, and this energy, this portal, feels like it's a big catalyst for something that is changing either within you or within your situation or your physical world. Like, everybody has some significant change that's happening.
Oh, 100%. And I pulled a card because I wanted a card for the beginning, and it was Surrender Now. It's the moth. And I don't know, I just was feeling these oracle cards, and I can take a picture and I'll put them somewhere and add the link, but for the full text of it all. So Surrender Now was the start. And then the end for this full moon was Reclaim Your Power with the Panther. So
that sounds super fitting.
It really was. I was like, oh, this is totally.
Yeah. You're being elevated, and we all are. We're being kind of elevated into what we're meant to be, and where we're meant to go. And so
100%. Well, thank you, everyone. Make sure you do those journal prompts. I'll put the link in the bio section. Make sure you follow Amy and I. Amy's on Facebook a lot at Wise Moon Energy. And then I'm at the Bohemian Tarot Girl. You can find me online. And have a great full moon. I feel like it's awesome energy, so embrace it.
I'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.